Good evenings and salutations, Internet Dozens. It is I, Wolfphototech, and here we are with another delightful video. This time it's the Game Master's Book of Non-Player Characters, or NPCs. This book is by Jeff Ashworth and his contributors, because he always has contributors in this book, on his books, for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It's a third-party book. This is not official Dungeons & Dragons material. This book has a blue, white, and black theme in coloring. His other two books have different color theming, like red, white, and black, or black, gray, and brown, and so forth. So there you go. The artwork is actually quite nice. This is actually one of the few times where the elaboration of detail that his favorite artist, Jasmine Cayley, actually comes out really nicely in a book, because oftentimes she overdraws maps to a level of detail that actually is distracting for neurodivergence and etc. and ADHD people. This is the forward by Jasmine Bueller, that bronze girl. Weird her choice and name for a Twitch stream or something. I don't go on Twitch. There's the introduction here. This book states that what this book is about, what this book is not, how to use this book, and that's it. This is actually one of the quicker, more to the point books of his the Game Master's Book of series. First and foremost, this book will basically tell you that this book is an idea starter. Not everything is flushed out or clarified to a very exact degree of details. Not everything is super balanced and exact. It's just enough stuff to build something off of, which is nice. Considering that these books sell for less than $20 typically. This one, MSRPs, is in the United States for $24. Same thing with the other one, and it's actually just under $23. So it's $1. This one's $1 more. But anyways, as this book says, what this book is not is it's not a comprehensive, everything is done for you. Just take this piece, stick it in your game, and you're good. It's like, this is the basic outline of a character. This is a basic outline of an adventure. There is obviously stuff that you're going to have to add to this little mini adventure to flush it out more for your players, because it's just an outline with some mechanics and some characters and some magical items and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and just a good framework to build something off of. That's the basic intent. There is a total of 3 one-shots in this book. There's the Where There's Smoke, Hidden Horrors, and Upside Down. Where There's Smoke is an adventure suitable for levels 1 to 5. And as you can see with these books, in this case of each adventure, it's typically mostly text throughout the whole thing with a map here. And this is actually a fairly good of the moderately high detail in the maps and common problems with some of these maps. A lot of these maps are really detailed with a lot of stuff on there. And then there's also oftentimes numbers added in that complicate things. Now, the problem with that combination of factors in these maps can actually cause them to be literally useless as an aid for the players. If a dungeon master does not have, say, like neurotypical characteristics that render it difficult to process really overly detailed, complicated objects, like ADHD or some forms of autism or Asperger's, these are usable for the game master. You basically can work out that there's a tree here, and then there's paths here, And then there's various apparent levels. And if you read through this, that's basically what's happening, is there's a ravine here. And this tree happens to be straddling the deep chasm or ravine down here. And there happens to be various things here and there. But anyways, if you were to say, like, you want to use these maps for your players, like you want to print them off and stick them down, you have the first problem of needing to remove all the numbers. And because Jasmine Cayley puts so much detail into her maps that you actually have to be a pretty good Photoshop artist or be a good sketch artist. Me at my prime, when I was going through art school, I could match her art style easily and fill in those spots. I could just like literally Photoshop, remove, take out the spot and then redraw it by hand with pencil or pen. But I can't do that anymore. My hand is not as good as it used to be. So there's that. And then if you don't draw to the level of quality close enough that it blends the details together reasonably, players are going to notice that there's odd spots on the map, and they're going to naturally want to look at those odd spots on the map. That's the problem with putting numbers physically on the map as opposed to doing what I do, which incidentally I took a lot of training in art, but I also took a lot of training in cartography, and I also took a lot of training in drafting. And I know how to redo all these even better than what they are done in this book. The problem is not the quality of the work, it's the fact that there's too much art, too much detail, and it's not the numbers are put on the wrong spots instead of using like a bar with a number letter system, where with a grid, which there is a grid, you can see that there is a grid in there. And if you simply had letters down one side and numbers across the top, and you had a key over here that references that there is a magic treasure chest hidden in A5, when players are wandering around near A5 and you see that there's a magic treasure chest in A5, you can ask the players to do a perception check. If their passive perception is not high enough to automatically get them the treasure chest that's stuck in the ground, you ask them for a perception check. They see the treasure chest, and then there's this weird piece. There's like this half ring of metal and some wood stuck to it in an angle, and like the player's like, what is that? And what are you going to do? And you're like, I'm going to go over to it and like try to dig away at it and see what it is. The piece of wood is rounded top. There is actually like rivets across it in like a band. It looks kind of like a box or a chest or something. And like the player is like, ooh, and gets excited and stuff like that. Yeah, I could really do circles around some of this stuff. Another case where the art style interferes with what it is. This is not hard for me to tell what it is. However, I know neuro-non-typical people that will have like mental fits seeing that. This is also, again, this is Hidden Horrors. There's only a total of 3 of these one-shots in here. However, we have to keep in mind that Jeff Ashworth either runs or his contributors run really, really long one-shots, like 10-hour one-shots or something, or they don't understand what a one-shot is. Because this adventure is level 6 to 10. That's not a one-shot. That's like thousands of points of experience and it's leveling up just to go from level 6 to 10. As typical, there's a lot of text in the adventure, and one map or 2 maps. Then there's Upside Down, which is level 6 to 10. Yet again, there's only a few maps, but yet again, this is literally not a one-shot. This is literally a small mini-adventure, like a mini-series. Not a one-shot at all. So I don't know what's up with Jeff Ashworth. He Him and his friends either run super long sessions, like 10, 12 hours, 20 hours, or they don't understand what a one-shot is. Then this next set of sections is basically just big city denizens. You have the common folk, you have the nobility, notable special characters. This is a common pattern with all these. I don't even have to show you all these sections, like the country folk section and the city section and the town section and the underground section. You just get the gist of just by looking at the big city folk section. Oftentimes, each one of these little sections right here is just one character. So you got two characters here. The rough description of the common folk section. As I said before, there's a band here, a band here. They vary in size. You got a little one right here. You got another one right here, and so forth. And then you ever so often will get a item or a mechanic thrown in, like blue beetle poison, contact, rare, 300 gold pieces, 1d6 damage, and is paralyzed. That sounds... 1d6 paralyzed, 300 gold pieces. I think the 300 gold pieces is a little on the high side. Another item over here, so forth. And then, as you can see, it's just a bunch of little sections, no artwork, basic idea of what the character is, and so forth. I'm actually going to read one of these characters. Let's go with Miriam McInturvish. And then there's this little bar right here. This is Miriam McInturvish here. There's a little quote here. "What do you think, Morty?" Yes. A little box right here. "An elderly woman with a singing voice and a pink complexion wearing a brown apron. Her curly silver hair is swept up under a red handkerchief." And then the for perspective section. "Miriam frequently pulls out a piece of cheese from her pockets, claiming it's a snack. She never eats it." A little information about her. An elderly widow and a homemaker, Miriam McTravish. Okay, see here, right here, there's an important detail you have to note in the in the way their name is spelled versus how it's structured up here. This makes it seem like this is all one normal name. Yeah, I refer to normal name, okay? But anyways, there's a very important pronunciation characteristic that is brought out by capitalizing the Mac and then Travish that anyone really needs to pay attention to if you're trying to convey a character or a culture. Mac is actually a title in either Irish or Gaelic culture. I have a brain fart for 5 seconds. I cannot remember which it is. Like O'Hare and Mick, like McDonald. So McTravish versus McTravish. This does not convey that is actually an associated title to her family. This does. Dreams of winning the local green thumb competition with the mushrooms she's cultivating in her cellar. Also, in her cellar are a family of mostly friendly giant rats that enjoy nibbling on her carefully cultivated fungi. Although their presence occasionally proves frustrating, Miriam would rather have a few rats in her house than plagued by an otherwise empty home. And then the next section is wants and needs. Miriam wishes she could protect just a few of her mushrooms from the rats so she can enter the green thumb competition, but she can't figure out a way to do it without killing the rats. Then the secret or obstacle. Miriam would rather love to stop the rats, even though big ones she dotingly calls Morty, from eating her mushrooms. She's carrying 12 gold pieces, a sliver of aged Gruyere covered in rat hair, a pair of reading glasses, a pocket-sized book on botany, and an ancient-looking love letter, signed Love You Always Mortimer. And there you go. That's the basic gist. There's a few small things. Mushrooms are not plants, so the botany book doesn't... The botany book is actually a poor combination of things. It's actually kind of funny. This is actually one of those situations where if you're a dungeon master and you don't know anything about botany and mushrooming or stuff like that, and you just happen to have a player that is into botany or mushrooming, you are going to start a long, complicated argument or conversation with this. And this is actually a common problem in Jeff Ashworth's books, that there's a lot of things that are layered into various characters or sequences or events or items or things like that, where if you just so happen to have someone who even has like basic knowledge of that field, it's immediately going to spiral into a sidetracking conversation or an argument, because mushrooms are not plants at all. Seriously. I know a guy who's a botanist. If I literally presented that character, that would literally spiral into a 2 or 3 hour conversation with him. There's the nobles and leaders of the big city denizens section. Typically, they get bigger sections, but not always. You get a full page, double page one, where you have a full piece of artwork, and then a much deeper explanation of the character, plus stat block. That only occasionally happens every so often. As you can see, it doesn't happen terribly often. But interestingly enough, it's typically always in the nobles section or the upper class characters, never really the poor people. So like big city denizens, you get most of a page for one character, you get a little sliver for another, you get an entire page for another character. You get a 2-page section for a character with 2 stat blocks, because Prince Hampton Leomax, gentleman right here, happens to have a ferret, and Sigmund the ferret also has his own stat block. Plus there's that shadow. And then there's also Rod of Tentacles and so forth. And it keeps going on going. Law Keepers and Law Breakers section and so forth. And you happen to have another one of those sections. You know, it's like the really special sections get most of the really full fill out. There is inconsistency in attire, which is going to bother some people who are into historical stuff. There's actually a few other interesting things in here. There happens to be at the end of each one of these sections, like the big city denizens, a random NPC generator table, so you can create your own characters off of this. It goes 1 to 20. And then you also have another one, 1 to 20 as well. And then you go into small town folk. I'm actually going to just blast past a lot of this, but it's still the same kind of pattern as the big city denizens. It just has like common folk, nobles, and then lawbreakers and law keepers section, and so forth. Various magical items littered about, some mechanics added in, ranging anywhere from a tiny little sliver of a section to a large section for a character. So there you go. At the end of that section, there's also another NPC Generator tables section, and so forth. And then we go into the Outskirts and Outpost section. It also has a D10 table here, just like the other sections. It starts with the common folk, then the normals, and the lawbreakers, and the lawmakers sections. So you have constantly the same pattern. Few items tossed in as before. You know, there's always going to be, every so often, a few items like poisonous plants or stuff, and etc. And then you will come across a few things here and there. Like, I have, like, this one really important rant I'm going to unload into. in a short moment. By the way, Winter Moon is actually kind of neat. I'm always big a fan of Attack Baxi. Okay, this is a mini rant. First and foremost, this is Henrik Steedcastle. Henrik Steedcastle. He is a centaur, and apparently he only gets this section right here for him, but he's also only a 3-legged centaur. I have to please note out that I grew up rurally. I lived on a farm as a child, and I worked at a horse ranch. That is a death sentence to a equine. Horses are physiologically built in such a manner that they cannot support their weight on 3 legs. They need something. He needs something to connect, like in a prosthetic, to connect to the ground. The way their body is structured requires them to have all 4 legs be able to make contact with the ground at any point, and be able to walk and stand and on 4 points. They can catch laminitis from having a damaged foot or no leg. Laminitis is extremely lethal, with like a 99% lethality rate. The likelihood of surviving it is terrible. Even if they get past it the first time, they increase in likelihood of getting it again and again and again and again until they're just horrible. So I've raised horses, cattle, and stuff like that. He is not long. In reality, he is basically dead. Anywhere near reality, he is basically dead. You happen to have a person who is into horses or equine, they're immediately going to mentally fixate on the fact that he only has 3 legs, and he's basically gonna die soon. It doesn't take long for that to spiral into a nightmare. Also, here's Zug Praxis. There is a quirk mechanic with this character, which is not within lore of Dungeons and Dragons. He is they're basically an Etin. It doesn't matter that one is smart and one is dumb. Normally, they are supposed to be both dumb, but the dominant side is supposed to be slightly smarter than the dumb side. They're still incredibly stupid, but the special mechanic basically does not make sense in the context of Etins and Etin society. However, you could easily overrule it if you're using this character in, say, like a homebrew world or such and so, or characters. It's just one of those things. It might actually spiral into one of those long ramble conversations if you happen to have a player who actually knows monsters in Dungeons and Dragons. Underworld Dwellers, yet again, another D10 table. Common folk, the same standard pattern, nobles, leaders. You got the lawmakers and the lawbreakers section, so forth. You got some interesting characters layered through it. Some bit of humor. Hello, the Foehammer. And so forth. And that's basically kind of it. You keep going, and you eventually get to the little extra section in the very back, where you got more random NPC generator for the underground folk. Side quest generator section, which allows you to generate small side quests. I never have used this yet, and so I don't know how well it works out, but it's rather interesting. And then you have the OGL section for the OGL. And I say, that's kind of neat. My personal thoughts on this book is that this is a neat starting point for creating characters or quick swapping in characters. However, there's various errors in this book, either in biology or lore and stuff like that, which can immediately spiral into session-breaking conversations, depending on if you happen to have a player that knows something about that field. It's really major errors that can literally get into, like, that literally makes no sense. That's not how that works in the real world, or that literally does not work in Dungeons and Dragons worlds or lore and such and so forth. So you have to, like, question a few things about that. Also, the one-shots are basically half completed for you. The maps are a little over detailed oftentimes, and they're not one shots unless you have 10-hour sessions. And even then, your players have to be, like, shooting through that stuff to make them into one shots, unless you don't add stuff to the one shots, in which case it doesn't make sense, and it's why the level range is as broad as it is on those one shots. So this is another one of those situations that it's like tipping on that 3-star territory, where it's kind of like, it requires a bunch of work. You can get into some issues with various players who know a lot about a particular subject, or even mild amounts of knowledge about a subject, like the mushrooms and botany thing. That's just going to spiral into a series of issues. Horses or centaurs that only have 3 legs is going to start a side conversation. There is just issues littered through these books that can literally devolve into session-breaking conversations. So this is basically like a 2.75 star thing. Unless your players happen to be city dwellers that don't literally ever get out of the city and they live in apartments. In that case, it's actually like a 3.5 star. Their whole interaction and knowledge base is playing games or just in the city. Yeah, then it works out. But once you get into people who actually know a thing or two about botany or animal husbandry or history or stuff like that, then you're starting to get into trouble. Okay? Thank you very much for watching this video. And as I said before, this is a 2.75 star book that, if the level of lack of knowledge of people is sufficiently low, can pass as a 3.75 star book. Yeah. If you really need something and you lack creativity, but you can do a lot of research and have a lot of time, and you have money to throw and burn, this book is a consideration, but I would not recommend this strongly unless you really just want to have a bunch of characters and a bunch of mini series or quasi one shots to run. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful weekend, a magnificent month, and see you next time.